I speak to hundreds of professionals every year, and I keep seeing the six same career mistakes, especially from top performers. So if you're making any of these career mistakes, you're probably finding you're working harder than ever and getting less in return. And the thing is, most people don't even realize they're doing them. So grab a pen, grab a paper, and let's get into it. Number one is staying somewhere that you're undervalued. Time is the one thing that you can never get back. And it's very easy to stay somewhere that you're comfortable or you're familiar. Believe me, I did that for a long time in my career. But if you're being overlooked for promotions or pay rises, despite mentioning this to your employer several times, then you need to start considering your options. Think about it. Instead of wasting years with a company that doesn't see the value, you could be moving up in an organisation that does. And it could be a company that pays you better, that offers more work-life flexibility, supports your mental health, and is just a better environment for you to come alive and thrive. Because when you're staying in an organisation where you aren't valued, a lot of the time your ability to shine and your ability to become the best version of you isn't able to come out because the opportunities for you to progress just aren't there. So you're staying in the same spot. I promise you, there is better out there. But when you've been somewhere for such a long period of time, you become quite institutionalized and you don't realize what you're missing until you start looking at what else is in the market. I've been there myself. I worked in recruitment and I was in that company for 4 or 5 years, and I wasn't very good whilst I was there. And I wasn't enjoying it most days. I loved the people that I worked with, but that wasn't a reason to stay. In truth, I stayed way too long. I wasn't succeeding and I lost my confidence in my ability, really, to perform the job. I was actually made redundant from the company, and although it felt horrible at the time, it was the best thing that could have happened to me because when I went to a new recruitment organisation, I found my footing. I was better than ever, making better results than ever, and I really felt like I found myself and found my flow. But it was only when I left that company that my energy shifted and I started seeing that success. Sometimes you just don't realise how bad it is or how much it's impacting you until you leave the organisation and you see what else is out there. So if a job is draining you more than it's developing you, then 2026 is time to really make that change. Number two is not saying what you really think. I do think this one gets easier with age, but you don't have to be confrontational, to be honest. And I think in business, that's a really fine line and something that I really had to understand quite quickly. Because staying silent doesn't protect your career, it actually slows your progress down and inhibits it. Especially as a woman, I used to think that I couldn't challenge things that I didn't agree with. Maybe I didn't have the authority or that my opinion would be wrong. But when you never speak up, you become invisible and you become overlooked. There's actually research from Harvard Business Review that show people who don't feel psychological safety at work, meaning they don't feel that they're able to speak openly, are actually less likely to be promoted in the organisation and not more, which I think is really telling. You have to have boundaries and it's okay to communicate them, but you have to communicate them in the right way and at the right time because your voice matters. I think the more that you speak up, the easier it will become, so it's almost second nature for you. And on the flip side of that point, if you're the opposite and you're somebody that is speaking up regularly, but you feel like you're not listened to, you also need to start asking yourself if it's time for a change, because any organisation that's worth its weight should be taking into account the voice of its employees, listening, taking that feedback and hopefully acting on it. So ask yourself, are you somebody that needs to speak up more going forward into this year? Or are you somebody that is speaking up and is not listened to, and you need to consider your options going forward into the year? Next up is saying yes to everything. Being professional doesn't mean that you have to be a yes person. In fact, it's the opposite. As I mentioned earlier, you need to make sure that you have boundaries in your career. As your career progresses, everyone seems to just want 5 minutes of your time, but we all know it's never truly 5 minutes. All those little favours here and there tend to stack up. If you keep saying yes to everyone and making yourself available, then it's a short, fast way for you to burn out and to fall behind on your own projects and your own work deadlines. There's a lot of research that goes into being a yes person, which is all around boundaries. And the lower boundaries that you have, and the more that you say yes, and the more responsibility that you take on, the quicker you are getting to burnout. If you think about it, when people constantly take on that extra work without necessarily getting the recognition for it, stress is going to rise and the performance is eventually going to drop because you just can't do everything. As much as you might want to show up for your employer, you can't do everything without getting towards burnout. My advice for you this year is before you say yes, just take a pause and ask yourself, does this protect my time and does this protect my performance? And if the answer is no to either of those, then your answer needs to be no to that person asking. Now, I know that you can't say no to everything. If you've got your boss asking you to do something, majority of the time you do need to say yes, but it's all relative. Just make sure that you are not the office yes person. Make sure you pause and learn to say no more to things that don't benefit you. Number 4 is not asking for a raise. Another thing that I hear is how many people in business take on a lot more responsibility and then they don't have the conversation about how they can be compensated for that responsibility. Another very common thing in business is somebody that's been at a company for years and they don't understand how much the salaries have shifted upwards during that time. So they are massively underpaid in that organisation. The company probably know that too, but they're just sitting tight and quiet. And this person is therefore being undervalued, where if they move, they could be in a much better, higher paid and higher valued position. I don't know why, but in the UK, money is still a very taboo topic. We definitely don't discuss salaries openly with our colleagues. And if you were to outwardly ask someone what they earn, you're usually going to get quite a closed off response from them. Whereas in other countries, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this is a much more open discussion. And I think this is something that we should be bringing into the new year. I would suggest talking to your colleagues and talking to your friends and looking online and having conversations with people that are in similar roles to you to understand what is the market paying for someone with my experience this year. Another really good tip is to speak with recruiters. They're the people who are chatting with people like you all day, every day, finding out all the gossip, finding out all of the intel, and they will have a really solid understanding of what your experience is and what you could potentially be earning for that. So make sure that you utilize everybody at your fingertip to get a solid understanding of where you could sit in the market and the kind of salary that you'll be able to attract with the skill set that you've built on over the years. You don't have to search far on the internet to see all of the data showing that people who don't negotiate or review their pay regularly with their employer fall up to tens of thousands of pounds behind their colleague throughout the course of their career. And it isn't because they're less capable, but it's simply because salaries tend to move faster and the loyalty is rewarded for staying long term in a company. Now, I know money might not be everything for everybody looking for a job. There's so many other factors that will contribute to whether you want to leave and change career this year. But one simple conversation with your employer could be the difference between you securing more money for the same job rather than having to go through that process to look for something new when the money was there for you all along. And plus, something to bear in mind is it is way more expensive for an employer to replace you than it is to keep you, which is why counter offers are given so regularly when people look to leave. And that is because the employer is not only losing you, they're losing the years of experience that you've got in the business, they're losing the credibility that you bring, the knowledge that you bring of their products and of their processes. And then on the flip side, when they're hiring, they've got the downtime of somebody that isn't in that particular role, so the opportunity cost of losing you, and they've got the cost of replacing you. So usually they'll be paying somebody more because the salaries have changed, and usually they'll be paying a recruiter a percentage of that salary. So it is in their best interest to keep you in the company rather than lose you. So be very open about what you're looking for, see if your employer can offer it, and don't be afraid this year to ask for a raise, because pay conversations are uncomfortable. But what's more uncomfortable is finding out for 5 years you've been massively underpaid because you didn't approach the topic. Number 5 is accepting a counteroffer. Now, I know this might split hairs, and I've just touched on counteroffers and how popular they are within organisations, but I have to say it. If you are looking for a job this year, make sure you're serious about it. Job searching at the moment is very stressful. I work with people looking for jobs every single day, and it seems to be one of the toughest markets that we've experienced for a long time. It's emotionally exhausting, it takes up a lot of time and a lot of energy. So if you are going into this year looking for a new job, make sure you've already had the conversation with your employer about if there's anything they could possibly do to keep you. 9 times out of 10, even if they say no, it's likely that they will still counter you when you look to leave because of the reasons I mentioned earlier in the video. But you have to look at it selfishly. Most people who accept counter offers, it's for short-term gain. They're not necessarily thinking about the long term. The reasons that you've wanted to leave, the reasons that you started even looking for a role in the first place, often don't change. Statistically, many people will still leave that company anyway because they realise later on, I'm still unhappy, nothing has changed. And the promises, unless they're in writing from the organisation, don't come to fruition. If you do take a counter offer, make sure whatever they are promising you is written down contractually. Otherwise, it could just be hearsay. If the only time your value is recognised is at the point of leaving and then they want to counter you, you have to ask yourself, why is it taking this long for the company to recognise me? And remind yourself that the company who are looking to employ you have seen that value right away and they're ready to offer you more than the current company has done for years. If you've decided to look for a role this year and you decide to leave, trust in that decision. You probably didn't make it lightly, and you need to ask yourself, what actually changes if I stay in this company? If the answer is not much, then I think you need to take a long, hard look at what you do next. And my advice to everyone is counter offers are really worth it. But only you know in your gut what's right for you. This is just my opinion. But let me know what your thoughts are if you've ever experienced a counter offer and it's worked out better for you, or if you've taken a counter offer and you've lived to regret it. My final point is prioritising work over your family. You might have seen a bit of a trend online recently about doing the bare minimum for your employer. Now, this is not the stance I take or promote at all. Personally, I'm a big believer in the harder you work, the luckier you get. But if the last few years have taught us anything, it's that a company can replace you and will replace you in a heartbeat when it suits them and when they need to. If you leave, they can find another one of you tomorrow. I've seen it every day. People who have given so much loyalty and so many years of their life to an organisation. The company are then facing financial difficulty. They need to make tough decisions. And that person who saw themselves being in that career until retirement now no longer has a job to go back to. They might leave with a redundancy, or they might be unlucky and not get a lot and be thrown into this whirlwind of a job search, which they weren't expecting. Yes, you want to show up and you want to bring the best version of yourself to a company every day, but there are a lot of organisations that can take the mickey and can ask for so much extra in return. Working extra hours, missing your school drop-offs and pickups, not taking the holiday, having to stay late and miss dinner plans. I've been there where I've gone above and beyond, and then I was made redundant from my company. So I think it's just really important this year to try and find that balance where you can. I know this is probably one of the hardest things that you can do, but don't let work become your entire identity. So yes, work hard whilst you're there and take pride in what you do, but make sure you're investing time with your friends and with your family, as they're the ones that are always there for you, even when your job isn't. So bear that in mind going into the new year. If anything I've said today has hit a nerve with you, then take that seriously, listen to what your gut's telling you to do, make a plan of action for what is going to shape your career going into this year. At the end of the day, your career should support your life and not be draining your life. And I know too many people that have been in the latter stage for too long. If you want more honest career advice like this, then hit subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.